Well, hi there, and welcome to Madre Selva in the heart of the Peruvian Amazon. I'm here with my buddy Buster, the cane toad, who has become a great friend of mine over the last few days, to welcome you here and to tell you that we have been searching for the last several days to find every amphibian species that we possibly could, and we found a ton. Now follow us. Let's go find them. This is the cane toad, and this is a species that has become invasive, massively invasive, for reasons I now understand, in many places. But this, where we are right now, this is their natural habitat. This guy is not an invasive cane toad, this is a native cane toad. Look at that parotid gland. It is enormous, and that is their big poison producing gland. You can see why in most places where these become introduced, nothing can eat them, or very few things, because they're super toxic. The reason, or among the reasons, that they've become so successful as invasives is A, they eat everything, B, very few things can eat them, and C, females lay up to 13,000 eggs at a time. 13,000! Now, their survival is usually low, but if they live in a place, say, where nothing can eat them, 13,000 grows a population pretty fast. This is a super duper toad though, and I super want one, but not this one. This is where they belong. This little cutie, who kind of looks like a toad, is actually a common big-headed rain frog. And as you might have guessed, for his size, he's got a pretty good sized noggin. He's also got a lot of bumps on his back, which is what would lead a lot of people to think this might be a toad. But you notice he doesn't have the big parotoid glands up behind his eyes. He's a really interesting frog. The only other rain frog you'd probably confuse him with has some pretty big ridges down its back. This one doesn't have those ridges, and again, it's got that big old noggin. Pretty snazzy little frog. This is a forest chirping frog, which honestly just looks like a tiny little model of a leopard frog. It's got the little ridges down its sides, it's got the same sort of spotting, the same basic head shape, not quite as long and skinny of a nose as a leopard frog, but this is just the world's smallest leopard frog. Now, it does not have webbed toes, so this one isn't much of a swimmer. This guy's going to spend more time climbing, and he doesn't have any big toe pads because he's so tiny that he easily clings to basically anything. He's wet, he's small, he climbs. Cute though. This is one of the coolest frogs I've ever seen. I have been so excited to share this guy with you since I first saw him, because I've never seen something quite like this before. But you might like crested geckos. They're a fairly popular creature, and one of the cutest, best things about crested geckos are their little eyelashes. You know how they've got those little scales that come up over their eyes? Well, this is an eyelashed forest frog, and it has eyelashes just like a crested gecko. And then on top of that, it's just absolutely glorious. It has a lot of really amazing contrast. These two beautiful ridges down its back, it's striped, and then on its belly, when you flip it over, oh my goodness, it's like it's wearing one of those skeleton Halloween suits. It's got this bright orange inside of its legs, both on the front and the back, so it's got like orange upper thigh and orange armpits. Yeah, the back is just so cool. They got more little fringes on their back legs. This is a really cool, really cute little eyelashed frog. If I seem a little winded, it's because I just had a heck of a rundown on this frog. This is a Smoky jungle frog, and I did not want to let this frog get away. These frogs are super cool, but they also occupy a very specific burrow. And when we catch reptiles and amphibians out here, we mark where we caught them so we can return them back to where they came from. This one in particular needs to be returned to its burrow, and it almost got away from me. But I do have this unbelievable, beautiful Smoky jungle frog, which at first glance, I mean, it feels like kind of a cool colored bullfrog. It's big. Now, of course, in these, the females are bigger, as is the case with most frogs, but not with bullfrogs. So the males are a little bit smaller. My guess is this is a boy. I saw some even bigger ones. They're not easy to catch. You have to hold them this way. You have to catch them this way, or they will get away from you. And I can tell you, last night, when I caught this frog, I had a little cut on my hand. I fell into a hole. There was, you know, sometimes when you're walking around looking up in a tree for a snake, there might be a 7-inch wide, 4-foot deep hole. And so I stepped into that particular hole and I caught myself with my hand and I just poked a couple holes in it. Well, last night, this frog reminded me exactly where those are because they definitely secrete some sort of toxin from their skin and it burned, I will tell you. But this is such a cool frog. Look at that pretty modeling on its belly, but this back, so gorgeous, so gorgeous. They blend in well to the leaf litter, and man, they can run if discovered. They are fast and amazing. This is a very weird frog. This frog is the sharp-nosed toad. It is a proper toad. It's got parotid glands up here on the side of its head. It doesn't have a warty skin though. It's very smooth. And it's got a sharp, pointy nose. It doesn't actually hurt. It's not sharp, but it is pointy. And they've got these cool little flaps down the side of their head. A very cool and pretty darn weird little toad. It's also got a lot of little orange spots, kind of little orange tubercles on the side, which I think are pretty indicative of the sharp-nosed toad. Stinking rad. Amazing. How many times will I say stinking rad this video? Who knows? Count. This is an Amazon sheep frog, which these sheep frogs, whoop, are very cute little guys. A little bit springy though. This one in particular, let's see here, and actually all of them, they've got very narrow little faces and big pudgy little bodies. This one can be distinguished, the Amazon sheep frog, from any others because its black side markings actually separate out the color of the back from the color of the legs. So the legs and the back are about the same color, but it gets these big black bars up over the shoulder that separate out. So they've got like a separate patch of tan over on their legs, and it's not connected to that on their back. What a cool frog. And then they got this mottled belly, this little stripe down their chin. I really like these frogs. They're really cute. Kind of a very pleasant size Amazon sheep frog. Next on our list is a particularly weird, I think probably leaf mimic of a toad, which is the crested forest toad. And this one's an odd one. This is a little bit like the sharp-nosed toad that we saw before, except his nose is not quite as sharp. His crests are a little bit bigger and his back is a little bit bumpier. He's also got a really gorgeous pattern. And I can tell you, there, he is a toad, so he peed on me. That's what toads do. It's in their contract with life that they must pee on anybody that tries to hold them. The crests, I can tell you, are a little bit hard. I mean, they're actually very hard. I'm not gonna push on them to see how hard exactly, but they're completely rigid. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that there's bone in there. A very cool little toad, and pretty and weird. Good combination. This cute little thumbnail dart frog is the spotted-thighed poison frog. It is mostly a very dark colored frog with a couple of bright colored lines, but it's most easily identifiable by the yellow spots that kind of look like angry eyes on this one on its thighs. So that's how you can identify them. Again, this is a wild dart frog from its natural habitat, and so it is poisonous. So I'm going to go clean up pretty well after this. I won't touch my eyes or eat anything, but very cool little frog and obviously quite gorgeous. This is a three-striped poison dart frog, which is kind of funny because here in the Amazon basin, it seems like most of them are the two-striped form of the three-striped poison dart frog. But this is a pretty wild dart frog. Here in the Amazon basin, there's nothing else with a pattern quite like this. These bright, bright stripes. And then in the middle, so there's a lot of jet blacks. Jet black over the eyes and all the way down the sides, onto the legs. There's some jet black stripes bordering the bright stripes, which can vary in color. But then here in the middle is just like it's like a mottling of the black and the color of the stripes. The biggest thing though that you'll use to identify this poison dart frog specifically in this area at least is that it is like the biggest dart frog around. And it is the jumpiest dart frog I've ever seen. Dart frogs usually kind of move around with these adorable little hops. This guy jumps like a proper frog, which is why I'm holding it very carefully. Again, is poisonous here, so I'm not gonna stick it in my mouth or touch my eyes with it. Nah, better not. This amazing little frog, who I will try not to let get away from me, is a convict tree frog. And this is a frog that you could very easily overlook how stinking rad it is, because at a glance it's just kind of a brown frog. It's got a darker, like a black stripe down its back, maybe kind of a dark gray stripe, but it almost just sort of looks like a dead leaf. But you know, the coolest thing that you can see if you're just looking at it, you know, say you encounter it during the day or sitting on a leaf at night, is it's got these, they're fleshy and soft, but these little spikes that come off of what is actually their heel. And those are pretty cool looking, but they're just fleshy little points that might add to the whole leaf appearance. They've got some very light bars on their legs, but when their legs extend, you can see this incredible, like somewhere between light blue and white and black barring that goes all the way down. That's why they're convict tree frogs. Wow! A hidden secret surprise. You won't confuse them with any other tree frogs. Super cool. So this frog is a white-lined monkey frog, and what a delightful little creature this is. This is about as big as the males get. Females get a little bit bigger, and they can be pretty easily identified by these long white lines down kind of just on the edges of their dorsum. They've also got a really long parotoid gland, which if you're used to seeing toads, that's that poison gland that they have back behind their eye. And one thing that's very special about these guys is look at these sides and these legs. Look at that orange in there. This is also a tree frog with vertical pupils. Most nocturnal tree frogs actually have horizontal pupils. So vertical pupils like this, or like you see on the red-eyed tree frogs, actually the exception, not the rule. What a pleasant little guy, hunkered down. Hope nobody notices me. Let's see what else we've got. This ginormous tree frog is a rocket tree frog, and that seems like a pretty appropriate name for him. This guy can cover some serious ground in a hurry, and they're pretty much shaped like a rocket. Something that's kind of crazy about these guys, so during the breeding seasons, the male develops like a spike on his front legs, and he uses those to hold on to the female during amplexus. Here you can see the sideways pupils, though, that are more typical of tree frogs. Like I said before, that vertical cat eye like we saw on the monkey frog, actually the exception, not the rule. This is a very cool frog though. Huge and fast. This gloriously beautiful little frog, I mean look at this guy, is a common polka-dot tree frog. I'd like for him to sit nicely, but I don't want him to get away. This isn't where he lives. These guys are so beautiful. So, I mean, that face, that is Kermit the Frog. He's got these beautiful yellow spots on the brightest green background with a perfect little white belly and 2 yellow stripes down the side. He's a beautiful frog. At night, though, they look very, very different. During the night, they turn kind of a reddish brown color with orange spots. So during the day, the most beautiful green you've ever seen with yellow spots. At night, reddish orange with orange spots. Beautiful day and night. Adorable, undoubtedly. And one of the coolest little frogs I've ever seen. I love this guy. I'd never heard of him before. This is a clown tree frog, and clown tree frogs are some of my favorite frogs. I really enjoyed them for a long time, but I've never seen one like this. So clown tree frogs can be identified. They got kind of a face a little bit like the hatchet-faced frogs, but they're bigger. And then they've got a little bit of webbing on their front legs, but especially on their back legs, and it is bright red also here on their sides. And this particular clown tree frog is the variable clown tree frog, which, as you might have guessed, they all look exactly the same. No, that's a total lie. They can look vastly different from one another. This one has a pattern a lot like a giraffe. They call it the reticulate pattern, reticulated, which means net. And I can totally see that. This is a giraffe clown tree frog. That's what I'm going to call it, the variable clown tree frog. This is a Bromeliad tree frog, which, you know, in its own right is a very cool but kind of unremarkable looking frog. They're just sort of a brown frog with a, you know, slight little mask and some darker brown barring here and there. You know, nothing that you would see as being completely out of the ordinary. However, there is one thing about them that is very unique and very cool, and that is when the males call, instead of inflating one big pouch, they've got two little pouches, and those pouches act as resonance chambers to make the sound of their vocal cords much, much louder so they can get their ladies. And a resonance chamber is like what you'd find on a subwoofer or a drum. So they inflate that up really big, they make a noise, and that resonance chamber makes it much louder, broadcasts it much, much farther. These guys have two of them, and I think that's pretty neat. This cute, tiny little guy is a spotted hatchet frog. They are kind of an interesting frog. These hatchet frogs have a very unique looking little face. It's kind of hard to describe it. It's kind of like a cross between a normal frog and like a guppy's face. They've got these big old eyes, as many frogs do, but again, that face is so cute. And these guys, they're spotted and they're the only ones without stripes of the hatchet frogs. So if you kind of know this hatchet frog face, it's not striped, probably spotted. This green little cutie is the greater hatchet-faced frog, who is tiny with an adorable kind of short, smushed little face. That's what the hatchet-faced frogs look like. He looks a lot like the other hatchet-faced frogs. One of the big differences is it's bigger. This is the biggest one. They're all small. So this one is small and the others are smaller and really small. The greater hatchet-faced frog. This little beauty is a Wakari poison dart frog. This is actually, because we are actually in the Amazon, a poisonous frog. It is also probably the most beautiful frog I've ever seen in my entire life. We've seen a couple on this trip that give it a serious run for its money, but I can't say that they are objectively more beautiful. I'm over the moon about this frog. And like I said, it is poisonous right now, so it's okay to touch it. It's not going to kill me, even if the worst should happen. But I've got to be very smart about not rubbing my eyes, not putting my fingers in my mouth, or anything like that after handling this frog. Because in the wild, they have access to the portions of their diet that allow them to sequester and produce these toxins. In captivity, none of our poison dart frogs are actually poisonous anymore. Oh my, I mean the colors on this, the blacks, the blues, the kind of a orangey copper, the yellows, and stripes, you got spots. This frog is just unreal. It's just unreal. This is the giant gladiator tree frog, which is one of the biggest tree frogs in the world. If there are bigger ones, I don't know what they are. And this guy is huge. In this species, males get even bigger than females, which generally indicates that they probably fight for opportunities to breed. And so the males are really, really big. The females are somewhat smaller, but still a ginormous tree frog. And they're usually pretty hard to find. But if you go out on a boat down the Amazon River in the middle of the night, You spotlight them just right, you can see that little eye shine. Go over and grab one out of a tree. Giant gladiator tree frog. This amazing creature is a Harlequin toad, and we went on a multi-hour excursion just to find these. These are such special little frogs. But really, to give you an idea how special these are and how rare, I'm going to turn over the time for a second to Matt Jepson, who is the one that got us connected with this entire tour, because this was one of the animals he was most excited to see.
This is a Harlequin toad, Hatchet spumarius. This genus is very special to me, and generally it's very special. These frogs have been nearly wiped out by chytrid fungus worldwide, and there are a few populations hanging on, a few species doing better than others, but on the whole, they're not doing very good. Part of it might be that they kind of tend to congregate in tight populations, and then you'll walk out of a population and there's just none instead of being fewer. But beautiful toad, and really one of the big finds, big targets of this trip.
Well, I figure we started with a giant toad. We might as well wrap up with a tiny little painted forest toadlet. And it's not a toadlet. Toadlets are usually what you call freshly emerged toads that have just metamorphed from being a tadpole into a toad, and they're tiny little versions of bigger toads. This is an adult. They just stay really small. And this is also not a toad. So it's not a toad and it's not a toadlet in reality, but it's part of a group commonly referred to as the toadlets, which, you know, tiny frog, or bumpy frogs rather, are frequently referred to as being toads even when they're not. And this is a bumpy frog. He's got these little red bumps, which are so amazing, but he's not a toad and not a toadlet. Look at this orange on his side and this amazing coloration. He's just so cool. But this is an adult frog, not a toadlet, but it is a painted forest toadlet. And with that, I just want to say thank you guys all for being here on this part of our journey here at Madre Selva, because from here we go somewhere that apparently is even richer in species. So join us then. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.